Welcome back to Final Fantasy Ultra Champion Edition. Today we're going to be tackling the Dark Cave, the Cave of Darkness. Let's take a look at the world map. We are here in the southeast corner of the map. The Dark Cave is in the northwest corner of the map, so we're actually going to get on the ship and head around the South Pole, I guess you would say, in this game, although it doesn't look like we travel very far. And then we travel east. So getting southeast is the quickest way to get there. I'm just demonstrating that. That is a tip given by the author of the patch here, to just get on the ship near where you pick up the airship, which is probably already parked down there. And almost nobody in the vanilla version of the game ever uses the regular ship again once you pick up the airship. There really isn't much use for it, especially if you have already covered the Castle of Ordeals, which a lot of players, myself included, cover before we even do the volcano or the ice cave. So in the mid-game troika, we usually cover the Castle of Ordeals first because it gives you a couple of really nice pieces of equipment, notably the heal staff and the Zeus gauntlet. So here is the Dark Cave, which I did fly over before, and I marked it. It is marked on the map, but I did mark it as a potential place to visit later. And here we are with the ship. We sail right into the Dark Cave, and you can see it is true to its name, completely dark, and you cannot see the walls. You cannot see your way through. There is a treasure room to the left of the staircase coming in. So we'll grab what's in here. The Invis Ring. That's going to be a very useful piece of equipment. And here is what must be a protected chest, given the two eyes with a nice undead combination. Protected chest here. And getting a couple of the battles in this dungeon because just to let you cue you in on what this dungeon is, it is a one-floor dungeon. There are not multiple levels to this dungeon. It's just one large room that is very difficult to negotiate your way through, with a few notable pieces of treasure and a souped-up boss at the end. So I'm going to be fighting a few of these battles, and I'm going to be saving some of my big spells for later. So I'm going to not use as many spells as I could when I was exploring this room off recording, off stream. Here's the Pearl spell. That's kind of akin to the Holy spell. There's that damage cap of 510 popping up again on a couple of those specters. And of course, the hammer-type weapons inflict critical damage on the humanoid-type undead enemies, so the hammers are very useful here. But if I was going all out and not trying to conserve, there's a Sting weapon. So we have the Invis Ring and Sting. That would be, of course, a Lord of the Rings reference. The ring that turns one invisible, and the Sting weapon right there next to it. I believe that is from The Hobbit specifically, where Bilbo, not Frodo, finds Sting and the Invis Ring. Now, I believe Sting is a thief weapon, or a sword, or it's at least a sword-type weapon, so it's not going to be something that we can use. This party, I'm noting that next time I play this, I might not want to stack two characters that use the same type of weapon. I might want to bring a sword wielder with me. And here is a battle with 9 Dark Knights. Now, the Dark Knights are susceptible to the Holy spell. So Esper up there, my paladin, who does have access to Holy 4 now at level 7. If I was not trying to conserve those castings, I would definitely cast that spell because these battles are great for experience and gold, which is we've finally, by about the Sea Shrine-ish, I think. Sea Shrine maybe going into the Sky Palace. We finally ran out of utility for money. We finally got to the point where money is not an object in this game. Now, so the next treasure room is down and to the right-ish. These are darkness elementals, and these are also susceptible to the Holy spell. So the Darkness Cave is a great place to grind if you do have access to your Holy spells, and I am going to use a Holy 3 spell here on the Darkness Elementals, so you can see what these battles look like. These Darkness Elementals, much like the Air and Water Elementals upon which they are based, do a lot of physical, nasty damage. And they can also inflict the Darkness status on your characters. And you can see they have quite high defense. Sulla normally does a lot more damage there with the axe. I do have my characters in a slightly different order than normal. I'm just trying something out. The cleric there is built to be kind of a physical tank. The cleric can equip the shields and a nice armor that the Viking cannot equip. So they can kind of pile up a little bit. But they do not have the evasion that the Viking does. So that's the difference between the two, is that the Viking has better evade than the cleric. So in terms of putting a character in the second spot, you've got higher evasion, so they'll take fewer hits overall, versus higher absorb. So they will take more hits, but take less damage from those hits. So it's a little bit of a trade-off there that I'm just kind of testing out here for now. And that's why I put the Invis Ring on Sulla. I meant to put it on T-Hawk there because normally T-Hawk has been in my third position for most of the game because I've taken evasion over the extra absorb before this. I'm just trying it out to see what happens. And the Ice Staff down there from Zonk because I'm trying to preserve Zonk's casting. I'm noticing that in this part of the game, Zonk is losing some of his utility in battles. In terms of random battles, it's nice to fight big groups of enemies because you can cast some of those big multi-damaging spells. And then, of course, he is very valuable at the start of boss fights, but much like other magic users in the vanilla version of this game, once you have set up your characters, your physical fighters really are doing a lot more. These are the final two rooms of the dungeon, by the way. You've got one treasure room here, and that's the final room down and to the left, but we do have a little bit of a trip to get there. But I'm noticing that my sage down there, Zonk, who has all kinds of different utility magic, runs out of his usefulness once you get to about the third or fourth round of battle. Having access to the haste spell is, of course, massively valuable when you can combine that with your fighters. So you can cast haste, and Zonk can even cast haste 2, which will get everybody in fast or haste status in the first round. So that saves you a round, but actually takes a round away from his usefulness as a result of that. And then you have Temper 2, which, of course, can buff up everybody. So it's nice that you can keep buffing up your fighters, but really once you get the first fast on your physical characters, he's basically done. The damaging spells I'm noticing, because they only hit once, are they're really starting to fade behind the physical fighters, especially Sulla the Viking there, who starts getting like 8 hits now when he's fasted. There's a stare, brings Sulla into stone status. And the Wake Ring, very important, gets them all up. Could have used that when everybody was down, but they woke up a little bit on their own. But the multiple hits really become much more valuable. Now, I don't know in the final dungeon if the bosses are going to start having insanely high physical defense. They become almost Astos-like, but to make a game like Astos in the late game would be pretty cruel. Maybe we'll see that. Of course, Astos has, for his point in the game, a very, very, very high absorb rate that at that point in the game, very few weapons. Maybe you have to have the Silver Sword. I'm trying to, off the top of my head, I can't remember his numbers and the numbers of all the weapons, but with most of the weapons that you can get at that point in the game, you can't get over Astos' physical absorb. So you almost have to have a magic user. There's the dragon shirt, the dragon mail, and that can go on my Viking Sulla. That can go on my Viking Sulla. And I am moving around some of our utility equipment and got to get Sulla back up now that he's healed from his status. But speaking of magic and physical attackers with Astos, you have to have magic at Astos in the vanilla version of the game to stand a chance of beating him without relying on critical hits to get through his absorb, is what I'm saying. So maybe that's what some of the end game bosses will be like. I would hope not, because it's something that would takes the physical fighters out of it and makes it tough to. If the goal is to make it so that any party can complete the game, I don't think that would be a choice that would be made there. We will see. And I do make a critical menuing error there. I do not move my opal shirt over to my cleric. Or the opal mail. I should have moved the opal mail over to the cleric to upgrade from the mithril mail. Cleric still wearing the mithril mail while the Viking has the dragon mail. So the dragon mail will put the Viking up on physical absorb, so it makes a lot more sense to have him in that second spot now. Either way, it was kind of a failed experiment anyway. I think I'm going to go for the evasion over that, and what's going to put it over is maybe not just the damage, but also the decreased statuses that can be delivered. Each hit has a chance to deliver a status if you have status attack like stun or darkness or whatever. And so by reducing the number of hits, you reduce the number of chances for those statuses to pop up. So higher absorb doesn't necessarily always win out. That's a lesson that I think we all took when we were looking at T-Hawk's, one of T-Hawk's challenges. When you read about those, if you want to visit T-Hawk's Final Fantasy site, he runs lots of challenge runs of this game and writes about them. In the Ice Cave, to get through with a very difficult party, he removed all of his armor, removed the armor from the characters to increase their evasion, and that was the kicker. That's what got him through those sorcerer fights, because if you have heavy armor on, your evasion goes way down, and you take more hits, and of course we all know the sorcerers only deliver 1 to 2 damage per hit. They deliver very little damage, but of course they have that status attack death, and as we talked about before, it's a non-elemental status attack death, so it's something that can go through ribbons and pro rings and such. So the secret there with a very weak party, or very very difficult party, is just to take off all your armor. So that's why I'm going for Sulla in that second position there, because he's going to dodge more of the physical attacks incoming. So here's another battle. Darkness elementals, tricky, deliver a lot of physical damage when they go for the squishier characters. They do have nice golden experience. Of course, again, gold not really important to this part of the game. Lets me keep my my cure potions filled. And that's actually having an impact on how useful my cleric is too, because I don't really have to rely on the cure spells so much anymore, because between battles I can just use cure potions. Now that money has become not something I'm worried about, I can use cure potions like crazy, whereas in the early game it was critical that I was using cure spells to heal up, or I would never be able to afford the weapon. So the priority of the game, kind of the curve of the game, slowly shifted as you got through there, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Money didn't kind of vanish from the game by usually about the Earth Cave or so. Earth Cave, maybe Crescent Lake, going on to the mid-game Troika. That's when money kind of disappears in the vanilla version, depending on how you play and how much you grind. But here we had kind of money was real tight, and then it shifted. So now I've got characters that were really good at the beginning of the game are a little bit less useful. And my physical fighters, especially my cleric or my paladin there, who was kind of a weakling at the beginning of the game, who had a pretty weak physical attack and of course a few white spells, is now a lot more versatile. So it's really cool. So this is a battle with death. And I will just temper up with the temper ring the first round. Get the wall spell up. That should protect against both elemental and status stuff that comes in. And haste 2 will get all of us hasted up. So death, of course, is a sprite swap of Lich. And by the way, the Blackwind Howls is I think that's a Chrono Trigger reference, the dialogue box that death here prompts. And it will be curious because Death is in a couple of Final Fantasy hacks that I've played. Death is the name that's given to the Lich 2 battle. when you go down to the Temple of Fiends Revisited and you fight Lich again, the bosses are sometimes renamed, and Lich is often renamed to Death. Carrie or Merilith gets another name. Tiamat, too, is often renamed to Shinryu, named after another famous Final Fantasy dragon. So poison there knocks everybody with poison. I'm going to cast the Purge spell because it will clear us all off. So I can go a little bit more defensive here than I did for like the Tiamat battle, where I lost a couple of characters and I wasn't playing as defensive as I should have, especially with this party. This party definitely should be prioritizing defense. So there's Life 2, and Life 2 is a damaging spell for undead. Life 2 in this game and Life also are damaging spells for undead, single targeting, or I think maybe they're all targeting damage spells for undead. Here's Meteo, and you notice Meteo gets the prompt of Boom Shakalaka. So Boom Shakalaka pops up when Meteo lands. And I think that might be a reference to Lich 2 casting Nuke. Meteo kind of is the Nuke of this game. Meteo is a little bit like the Nuke spell, and I think that's a nice reference to later Final Fantasies, because Meteo kind of supplanted Nuke, just like Holy kind of supplanted Fade as the damaging white spell, or of course in this one it's Pearl. So I'm just trying a few different spells. Now that we're hasted up and protected, I'm just going to go on the offensive, but you can see how much more damage my Viking is doing because of the multiple hits. 10 hits when he's fasted, and each one of those has a chance to go critical. So that's why the magic users, especially against bosses, tend to lose their utility after a couple of rounds. Once you get the buffs up that you want, now those buffs, of course, are very important to have on, so it's not like the magic users aren't worth having in the party, but you find yourself kind of wondering. Both of these weapons are not going to be useful for this party, by the way. I will test those out. But once you pick up haste and a temper or two, and you have your protection from the wall spell of all the elements and all of the statuses, you're just kind of maybe healing some. If you've got white magic, you're maybe casting the occasional Cure 4 or Chakra when a character gets a little low on hit points. And then the Sage doesn't have much, because the Sage kind of turned into my all-around black mage. After I noticed that I have all of the white magic covered between my two white magic characters, I decided to make my Sage emphasize black magic. But anyway, that is it for the Dark Cave. One floor, a couple of tricky fights with some enemies, but we do have the death battle at the end go successfully. If you like this video, feel free to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you have not already, and most importantly, leave me a comment. I love to hear your feedback on this patch and other patches that I've played, and suggest any future patches you would like to see played on this channel. We will see you next time for another bonus dungeon.